Yeah, and it adds a bit of replacement to the population. The most important thing about that brood is it's going to hatch out, and it's going to give the queen a new frame of empty comb to lay new eggs in. Okay? So that the bees don't think that something's gone wrong. Okay? Now, walkway split. You'll see this looks a lot more even on the face of it. We've got honey, pollen capped and uncapped brood, and we've got honey, pollen capped and uncapped brood. So we've basically just walked in, taken half of the hive, put it into a new one, and then put them both down and walked away slowly. And we don't know where the queen is. We don't know what's going on. It's so unbalanced because the hive that you leave in the original location, doesn't matter where the queen is, but they're going to end up with a hell of a lot more bees than this hive. Okay? And it's also worth noting that when we're moving frames, we're not shaking bees off, we're just lifting them over with the bees on there. This will be quite a weak hive. So what we were talking about in terms of management and watching after a split is heightened when you do this one. The risk of the new hive in the new location failing is more or is higher than when you find the queen. So, 1 week after, we're going to check both hives. Okay? We want a queen cell in one, and we want the queen in the other. In both situations, you don't need to see the queen. You'll know because 1 week later, if there's eggs in one, then that's the one that's got the queen. If there's no eggs in the other, that's fine, but you're going to want to see a queen cell. And it's very difficult to miss because if they've worked out that they're queenless and they're generating their own queen, they're going to freak out and they're going to make lots of queen cells, not just one. Okay? And that's fine. In this particular instance, we're not going to crush them or interfere with them, but we're going to just make sure that we're watching and we're making sure that they're doing it. Okay?
How long do they take to realise and start making queen cells?
Sometimes some of them don't realise, in which case we need to move a frame of eggs over into that hive or a frame with eggs over to give them another shot at it. If they miss out on the first time, they'll definitely get it on the second, pretty much. Okay? So that's why we go in 1 week later.
But generally 2 days they've started drawing queen cells.
Yeah, it's quick. 1 week you'll see them really, you'll see them in big evidence. Yeah, if not, give them another one. And it's never a real risk because you know now that the queen's in that frame. Yeah. So you can bring over a few eggs and do it, okay? Next one, resources okay. So we anticipate the hive in the original spot will be stronger as it has the foragers. Are they building new comb? Okay, this is what I was talking about. The foragers will typically stimulate the building of new comb in the original spot. In the new spot, they'll be slower. We can stimulate that by feeding. Feeding will help with that and it will stimulate the hive to pick up quicker. But that's sort of dealer's choice. And secondly is feeding required, which we talked about. Okay, so troubleshooting. These are questions. Sorry, I did mention there was a quiz at the end, right? Cool. All right. No queen or queen cell in one hive. So there's no queen and there's no queen cell. What do we do? Put eggs in. Great. We can also recombine with the original hive. So I've put this in just to let everyone know that it's always reversible, what we're doing. If you do it and you go, I've got no idea what I've just done and I've probably stuffed it up, you can whack them both together again. Okay? The way we typically do that is by putting newspaper between the boxes and then just lifting the box on top and putting it over. Okay? So taking the new hive and putting it straight over onto the old location, effectively making a double brood box. Okay? But moving a frame of eggs over, I wouldn't give up at this stage. 1 week in, too early to give up. Okay? Hive in new location has no resources. We've got 2 options here. One is
move some over.
Move some over. Great. The other one is feed. Great. All right. Now, hive in new location has a low population. We can recombine, as always, or we can move a frame of capped brood over. Okay, so capped brood is a magical resource, just in general beekeeping, not just in this. If you move a frame of capped brood into a hive, you're giving them all of the bees that will hatch out, that will become nurse bees and kick everyone further along in the sequence. You're also giving the queen laying space once those bees hatch, and you're doing this at no cost to the new hive. They don't need to feed those bees feed the larva, build them up, do anything like that at all. It's just free bees over there that will hatch out, and they're young bees. Yes?
Could you just grab a frame from the wood hopper
Yep.
of house bees
Yep.
and shake them in front of the new
I
hive?
shake them in. Yeah.
In front, not inside.
You can do it. Yeah.
And they'll fall in and adopt the hive.
Yeah, you can do. You can do. If it's too cold, they'll all die at the front.
Yeah, and
If-
with beekeepers, you've got the queen there.
Yeah, if you do it with the queen, then
Yeah.
you've doubled your problems, because then both will have no eggs, and then you're asking Brett for emergency permits.
I'm in blue.
Yeah, okay, well, then you're fine, then you can do whatever the hell you want. So, yeah, basically you can do that. I shake them in. I just shake the bees straight in. They're accepted generally quite well as long as they're house bees. I lift them up and I just wait for a minute, and all the bees that can fly usually take off. And then you know that all you've got is house bees at the end. Okay, great. Hiving new location, not building comb after a month and not expanding. There's two options. One is always to recombine, and the other one is feed. Okay. Post-swarm management. So everything's gone to hell. You've tried and it hasn't worked, right? And you've seen bees leave your hive, or you've gone, hold on, there's not as many bees in my hive this week as there was a week or two ago. So you've got to manage your swarm in accordance with DPI rules that we talked about earlier. You've got to requeen your swarm with, requeen the swarm. This is in the blue zone. If you catch it, it's always advisable to requeen your swarm with a less swarmy queen. That is basically just get a new queen in there, because old queens are more likely to swarm. You can have swarms, and it happens often, where you get a swarm, put it in a box, get it up to speed, and then it swarms again in the same season. Okay. Prepare for secondary swarms. So if you hive a swarm, look in there. There will be new queen cells. Remove all but one or two queen cells. And if you're removing all but two, they should be on the same frame and near each other. Okay? That's to give the queen a chance, the first emerging queen a chance to kill her neighbour, and not miss a queen, which could then lead to secondary swarms, which are always weak and usually fail. Now, this is the final thing that we work on. So this is sort of last bit of insurance. We use swarm boxes. Okay, these are our swarm boxes. This is a cutaway of one. It's actually a complete full box. I was going to bring one, but I came straight from work. So swarm boxes, they've got to be 40 litres, approximately, in volume. That's what they look for. You can bait them, and that's baiting in the old use of the word, not the DPI use. So baited with Swarm Commander or lemongrass oil. Swarm Commander is superior, and proper swarm lures that correctly emulate the Nasanov pheromone, which is the queen pheromone, work very well. The reason we use lemongrass oil in place of that is because you don't want to buy it, or it's unavailable, or it's cheaper. But Swarm Commander is great. And you need to have old smelling bee stuff in there. So an old frame in that hive. You can't have an old frame with drawn comb, that's not allowed. But what we do is we get an old frame, melt it down, and put some fresh foundation on it and put it back in. Okay? Alright? Yeah, you're not allowed. Drawn comb. So, so if you don't have 40 litres of space, if you don't have boxes like this, 40 litres is roughly one full deep 10 frame box, or a full deep 8 frame plus an ideal on top. That roughly equates to the same size. If you're using a swarm, if you're baiting for a swarm, you'll see that there's underneath here, there's a lot of vacant space. That's critical for swarm management. The bees go in and they measure the space. So if you've got frames all throughout your swarm trap, it won't be as successful as a space underneath where they can measure that space and work out whether it's appropriate. Yeah.
How many frames are you putting in there?
That one, 5. That has full 5 because it's got that gap underneath. But typically in
You just go side to side.
yeah, so this is a specific swarm trap, so this is 5. This is 5.
You'll make it that wide, so you're making
5.
filling it. So if I've made one this wide, I should fill that one.
No. Not, so I can do 5 because I've got void. If you're making one that is effectively a 10 frame group box, you need to give them that space, so 1 or 2 frames in there is enough.
2 frames works really well.
Yeah, it works really well. They need that
I
space.
just want a starting point.
Yeah.
That's all they want.
The reason we use 5 is because we put these up in trees and all around the place. If bees move in and we've got 1 frame in there, then we're doing a cutout. If we don't get back there within the time that it takes for them to fill up 1 frame, which can be a matter of days for a big swarm. 5 frames buys us time. If you're setting one up in your house, you put 1 in. As long as you're keeping an eye on it, which you will, because it's kind of like fishing. It's really